We have our visitor here today. I see Armadalik Bey. Nice to see you. Welcome.
Likewise. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Good to have you. You'll get to see the president today as well. At least that's the rumor.
Stoll and I came looking for you down the hall after we spoke, but you had gone.
Oh, I'm still here. I'm just locked away.
I was looking all over the place. I'm like, where did he go?
We're both over here in the trailers, but
Thank you for calling it that. Thank you for being honest.
That's what I get to do in this role.
Yes. Anybody is welcome to come to the trailer and have some natty light and something in the crock pot.
At least it's not a tent.
What did you call it? Natty what?
Oh, natural light.
Natural
The
light.
beer of champions, yeah.
Natty in the cooler, you know.
That's hilarious.
PBR, Vin. Come on.
I learned that from the Applebee's song, I'm going to admit.
We have a quorum.
Okay. Welcome, everybody. I'll call the meeting to order at 3:01 p.m. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes. Now, we have two sets of minutes. One was posted earlier, and then the other minutes from last meeting. So are there any additions to or corrections to the minutes of January 29 and February 12th? Hearing none, the minutes stand as approved. Great. Now we move to, I don't know, I guess we don't yet have Greg here if anyone spots him. I see we do have Chris Ackerman, though. Welcome, VP Ackerman. Nice to have you here. Got a new HR director, chief HR officer here, so that's wonderful. Just 3.5 weeks in. Oh, we got Greg too. Okay, I see him. He's here. But got a lot of great folks here, and as I said, we got visitor Alec Bay here as well. So let me start us off. I'm not going to start with a long opening statement since we've got Greg. We had one bite at the apple this morning, so we'll have, I think, maybe we had 20 to 30 minutes or so with Greg. We got a full agenda, but it's not as bad as I thought. Looking at it, I mean, we have a lot to do, but and we have had a sort of consequential board meeting since we last met on the 27th, I suppose. So if you had any questions for me either, I'm happy to answer those questions. If there's any concerns that you've heard from faculty about how I'm representing us, I'm happy to hear those here in public as well as in private. But let me go ahead and hand the meeting over to Greg for some comments, and then we'll get going from there. Greg, you're muted.
Okay. All hear me? I guess
Yes.
you all can hear me now. Outstanding. Yeah, you know, I'm kind of at a loss with how to move forward in this environment, given that we've already, I think now in the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've probably between the faculty meeting, right? The general faculty meeting, the town hall, the academic town hall, and today, that's probably, I think this would be my 3rd time in a 3-week period.
You're like part of the group here, you know.
I think you're tired of hearing me talk. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to make this easy. What I will do is, instead of giving any type of presentation kind of deal, let me, for those of you, you know, in case you've missed it, I'm just going to briefly give you some highlights, and then from there, just open it up for questions. I think that's the easiest way to handle. So, look, the reality is we continue to have good year here at Mason. It is interesting. At some point, we know that we're going to tail off and either level out or go the opposite direction. It's just natural. I'm an engineer by training, and so when things continue to go up, even I understand that that's actually a sign of monotonic instability. It's not, you know, you need some correction in order to consolidate and then move forward. But we're in we've been in an uptrend in a number of areas. We just had rankings, online rankings to come out. We've done significantly well there. 9 of our 13. We're ranked in 9 of 13 online ranking categories, and that's a good thing. That's higher than any other institution. You know, in our state, and so that's a good thing. Our research expenditures are growing at close to 9%, and in this environment, I'll take it. I'll take any growth in that area. It doesn't mean that in the future we're going to see growth. However, given the fact that every day I hear about another project that is getting doged or is about to be, and so that's a challenge. But nonetheless, we continue to have really strong research performance. Our 86% of our students are employed in the DC metro area from the latest, the last graduating class, and that's good as well. And our enrollment is up. Our undergrad enrollment continues to grow, and grad enrollment, we thought we were going to see 3 to 4% reduction in grad enrollment. That has actually modulated upward a bit, and we're only seeing a slight decline of about 1.1%. We think we're going to end up somewhere around there in the end. And so lots of really, really good things happening. The challenge is the outcomes of the executive orders and the additional costs associated with athletics are causing some headwinds. As you all have been painfully aware, we're managing those, and we will continue to manage those as we move forward. But suffice to say, another year, given that we're now in the spring, we only had a few more months before this spring semester is over. And, we're coming out of this year stronger than what we were when we went into it. And so I feel pretty good about all of that. And so I will stop here, open it up for questions.
That's great. I think that's great to do that. And as we did have a town hall this morning, so many of you, I know many of you were there and got to see the full slide deck, which is not the first time many of these things have been there. So there's an opportunity for you to weigh in. So what questions do you have for the president? Melissa.
I'll start with one. Thanks for being here, President Washington. And I'm sorry I couldn't be at the thing this morning, but one of the things I haven't really heard a lot about, but I'm seeing a lot of news about, is the potential shortfall in Pell Grants. Do we have any sense on whether and how that's going to impact us, or is it just way too early to know?
So
just given our student population.
at last check, and I got to be mindful with how fast things change. At last check, Pell Grants were not affected in the overall set of cuts that had been going forward, and so it looks like, at least for the time being, that they're okay now. But we will continue to check. I haven't heard anything additional, and I try to stay pretty close to the headlines. Trust me, if there is a major change there, that will be a national headline issue. And then so I haven't heard it yet. Doesn't mean it's not going to happen. I feel okay to say that, at least for now, that Pell Grants are safe. So that's probably the reason why you hadn't heard much from it or much about it.
Okay. Alex.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks for being here, President Washington. I just realized the other day that you came to us during COVID, saw us through that, and now we're dealing with the dismantling of the federal government. So it seems like there's no end to the chaos that you're having to navigate. So thanks for helping us out with that.
I'm a crisis president.
My question is about, some of it's a follow-up to the last board meeting where against a lot of people's wishes, the board made an adoption of a new anti-Semitism policy, and now we find ourselves on a list of 60 universities that the Trump administration seems to be targeting. I think a lot of us have watched with concern what's going on at Columbia, as resources are withheld from them and concessions are being extracted there. I'm curious if you have thoughts on where we stand in that list of 60, what we can expect to come out of it, how we're planning to navigate that. Any insights you have on that? I know it's probably early and this stuff is changing by the minute, but anything you've got on that would be great.
Well, so I can highlight a few things. First and foremost, there's a big difference between George Mason and many of the institutions on that list. And I can say that pretty comfortably. Let me highlight a few things just to make it clear. We didn't have a lot of the challenges that many of the other institutions on that list had. We didn't have encampments. We didn't have occupation of buildings. We didn't have blocking of any of our Jewish students, faculty, and staff from attending class or traveling about the campus freely. Our protests, for the most part, were activities that, in my opinion, were protected directly by the First Amendment and by the U.S. Constitution. And so the question then becomes, well, why is George Mason in that list? There's a high-level reason for that. We were under the original slate of institutions that were investigated after October 7th for anti-Semitic activity, which included those very protests that I highlighted to you earlier. There was a cohort of a little more than 100 institutions that were actually, for lack of a better way of putting it, that were investigated. A number of those were adjudicated. Ours was not, and then that was by the previous administration that had launched that investigation. If you read the letter for our current investigation, if you read it carefully, and I'll read you the text of it, it does state it. I'm going to read you the sentence. The letters that we receive, it says, are addressed to all U.S. universities that are presently under investigation for Title VI violations relating to anti-Semitic harassment and discrimination. And we were an institution that was under Title VI investigation, and thereby being an institution under Title VI investigation, we actually ended up on the list. So that's a high level reason as to why we were there. We sent a response basically highlighting everything that happened since our initial investigation started. We were investigated. We sent a response on February 4th, 2024. And for the last year, we've gotten no response on the response we gave. What we did do this time, since it's now been a year since we submitted our last response, we actually updated that with all of the different initiatives and outcomes that we have put in place since that time. And we submitted that to the federal government as well on top of it. We'll see what happens here. Like I said, I don't believe that we're in the same category, but we're in the same category. and so we're just going to have to let the process play itself out and manage the process accordingly. Okay, I hope that answered the question.
Thanks. Thanks, Greg. Tim.
Tim Gibson. I knew I was going to get a
Yeah.
Tim question. Always, you never cease to show up.
It's always good to talk to you, President Washington.
Always.
Yeah. So, well, I want to follow up on a statement you just made about that what we saw here in terms of protests against the Israeli genocide in Gaza was protected free speech. And with that in mind, I'd like, my question is, can we get an update on what the status of the two students who were given those 4-year do not enter campus judgments, or that the chief of police has excluded them from campus for the next 4 years? Far as I know, since the search of their house and the leaks about what may or may not have been in the house, or what was found in the house, perhaps, that no one has been charged with a crime, and no one has been charged there's just been silence. So when can we expect that the administration will lift the order on these two student activists and allow them back on campus?
So let's talk about that so that you get an understanding of where we are. There are two processes here that are playing themselves out. One is a student judicial process, and that process is actually ongoing. There actually has been developments that have happened there, and they're going through that student judicial process now. That will decide what happens relative to those students getting back on campus or not. Then there is a criminal process that you're absolutely right. They have not filed any formal charges in the criminal process, but there are two separate things, and there's a different burden of proof in each. Just so that we're working from the same page. These students, the reason that the home was searched and the reason that they were under suspicion was because of a charge of vandalism. It was really under the suspicion of vandalism, and that's what led. And I don't want to get into all the details of what actually led to the home being searched, but there was credible evidence that led to the fact that there was suspicion that these two students were involved in that, which led to a lawful search warrant being issued to the police, and then the police went in and searched the home. One of the reasons it's taken so long is that there was a very large amount of information from computers and other entities that have actually been that has been analyzed and is being analyzed, and so that's kind of where that process is. It'll be adjudicated through the normal university processes as we move forward. I can't get into all the details about that because it is an active case. But I will say and that information is public in terms of the kinds of things that were found in that home. They're actually disturbing. And so you should look at the press reports of that so that you actually know yourself all of the details.
No, I have. I just to push back slightly on that. What we have in the press reports are quotes from police sources only. about what they found. And I think that, one of my areas of expertise is the media. And one thing that we know about police reporting is that historically, when you only hear from the police, that initial statements have a long history of being proven in the long run to be false or to be exaggerated. Now, not always, of course, but I think it's prudent to withhold judgment, especially when what we know or what we think we know about what was found as a result of these search warrants is only coming from police.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. And so, I don't know how this process is going to work itself out, but it will. I've been privy to see what that evidence looks like, and I can tell you that the reports are accurate, and it even to the extent that there may be even more stuff than that was actually reported. And so, I think we're just going to have to work through the process.
Yeah.
Remember, as a leader, I have a responsibility, to keep the campus safe, and I'm going to exercise that responsibility to the best extent that I can. I'm not going to always get it right, but the reality is, this is when I feel comfortable with the decisions that the campus is making when the campus is making them. I just think we're doing the right thing here, and time and evidence are going to bear that out. We're just not at that point yet.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Tim. I'm going to go to Dell and Alok, and then we'll come back to Alex. Dell.
All right. Thanks for being here, President Washington. Very much appreciate it when you come to Faculty Senate. My question involves how the evolution of our, as an institution, protection of foreign national scholars is moving along, because obviously the environment since, before the break and before the Christmas break, you were giving guidance, and I was just curious if you felt it was necessary to update the guidance you're providing to our foreign nationals, particularly in light of the revocation of visas of PhD student at Columbia and a scholar at Brown University. And I'm just curious, especially as it relates to our ability to speak freely and openly as academics.
Look, Dalton, you know how I am, right? I tend not to sugarcoat, and I tend to tell you what I feel on these issues. I don't, from the evidence that I've seen, okay, and I'm holding out some level of hope that there's more that I haven't. But the reality is, I don't know how the student gets his visa and other his green card revoked for what he was actually doing. I mean, he wasn't involved in the takeover of the buildings. He wasn't involved in violence. At least this is what has been highlighted. If those things are true, and it was just him leading an effort, leading a protest effort, and being at the forefront of that protest effort, I think the federal government's going to have a hard time proving its case. I don't think the kid still has been charged yet. I don't think he's been charged, and I think they're going to have a hard time proving their case. And we'll see. We'll see how all of that works out. That being said, it paints an ominous picture for students and scholars everywhere who speak out against those issues. I do believe that they're, if all of that is true, I do believe that there are free speech issues. And this is irrespective of if you agree with the kid or not. It's not about that, in my opinion. This is really about, does he actually have a right to say the stuff that he was saying? It's not whether I agree or disagree with it. And, and the more I read on the subject, the more I come down on, I don't necessarily agree with what he was saying, but I do agree that in this country, he has the right to say it. You know, there's certain things that make you an American. There's certain things that make, oh, this doesn't sound right. There are certain things that actually do make America great. And that is indeed one of them, right? The ability to have freedom of speech, the ability to, for lack of a better way, criticize your government or higher ups or whoever when these entities are doing things that you don't agree with or you don't believe in. That's in my opinion, a fundamentally American construct and fundamentally American right, and I'd hate to see it eroding. And so, let's see what happens in the process as we work through this. But my concern is that this spreads, and that you just start seeing people indiscriminately targeted because somebody doesn't like their speech, and I'm just against that. I don't think. I do not believe that's American. And that's regardless of the speech, mind you. Look, I'll put it to you this way. I'll take it one step further. I think that I can comfortably say that throughout this process, since October 7th, very few people, especially people on this call, have had more vile things said against them than I have. Okay, in terms of things that have been said against me, things that have been said to me personally. And while I will tell you that I fundamentally and vehemently disagree with 99.99999% of it, I actually agree with the right of the individuals to say the wrong things that they've said to and about me. So, I'm speaking from a perspective of someone who has had to endure pretty harsh, incorrect criticisms in my mind from a whole host of individuals, from students, from staff, from board members, all alike. I had to deal with it all. And I will tell you unequivocally that people have a right to say that. We're a public institution. I may not agree with them, but I agree with their right to express. And that's what makes us fundamentally American, in my opinion, along with a few other freedoms.
Thank you. Let's go to Professor Barry and then to Alex. You're muted, Alec.
Is it okay now?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Washington, for giving us all the information. And I just want to say, you said there is no sugar coating. I want to put a little bit of the sugar coating, and that is, I feel that the George Mason University handled it in a very nice way and controlled it in a very nice way. When all these things I was seeing, those problems were coming, and George Mason was quick to try to diffuse the situation. But now my question is this, that, whatever is happening all over the country about the universities, and we have been consistently growing very well in this area. So you think with the present situation, we will be affected in any way for the coming academic year? It will be about the disenrollment of the students, as well as the getting new faculty members in all the university, which the departments which are growing. So what is your opinion about the direction in which we have been going pretty well? We appreciate that. And now what is going to happen in the next year?
So this is actually a tough question. And let me explain to you why I say it's tough. Uncertainty is real. I can't tell you what's going to happen. I can't tell you if we're going to get flagged or, the reality is Columbia's funding was taken away before they were convicted of anything. It's not like they went through a process and then at the end of that process, they were said, okay, you were found liable or guilty or negligent in these set of issues, and the federal government is pulling resources from you because of that until you fix them. No, it was the opposite. It was like ready, shoot, aim. They took the resources and then said, okay, now we're going to enter into a process to see how we move forward so that we can restore them. That, as we used to say growing up in New York City, that's gangster. I mean, there's no other way to put it. I mean, he basically just took the money up front and then said, okay, now prove to us that you deserve to have it back. That is, I am sure that there are legal problems with that process. The problem is by the time the legality gets adjudicated or not, the damage has been done to the institution, and the damage has been done to those graduate students that go through a legal process. I mean, all of you are PhD students. Imagine if somebody just took a year out of your process. You were not paid. You don't know how to figure out how you were going to eat. You couldn't, right? And while this thing was being adjudicated. I mean, at the end of that $400 million were postdocs and researchers and students. And all, I mean, that's where all that money goes. That money goes 80 some odd percent of it. I can guarantee you it's going to people. Okay. And you just yank those resources out of the way. So even if it takes 6 months or a year, there were folk who are going to have to figure out what to do throughout that process for that period of time. And so whether they get it back or not, some of that damage has been done. Okay. So that's one part of it. Our goal is to avoid that. We don't want to be put in that situation, because even if we are found that we've done everything right and we've made the right decisions, there's still damage and harm done to the institution through a process like that. And so our goal is and that's why we are proactive in putting forward outcomes to this stuff, and we will abide by all of the outcomes of any investigation, because we don't want to be in that situation. The uncertainty comes, and the reason why I say your question is so hard is I have no idea what people are going to do or why they are going to do it. And so I believe that we need a strategy for our current foreign graduate students and our foreign postdocs and the like, people who are here to study or to get practical training relative to their studies. We need an FAQ for them, and we'll be working to put that together so that they know how they should properly operate in this environment. Outside of that, there's not a whole lot we can do until, we start to have to manage outcomes, real outcomes. Okay. I hope that answered the question you had.
I'm just going to keep going with questions because we got people popping up now. So Alex, go ahead.
Thanks, Don. President Washington, I wanted to follow up on something you said in the meeting earlier today that I found pretty impactful. I think that you were speaking in reference to Charles Cooper's discussion at the last board meeting, where he said that individual faculty members don't have academic freedom. And you said something along the lines of, while you don't think academic freedom is directly under threat at this particular moment, that it will inevitably come under threat, and that faculty not only can't just sit around and expect like you or the AAUP to save them, but they have a duty to organize themselves and defend academic freedom. I was wondering if you could, I mean, I love that point. It's almost like I wish I could snip it into an ad for the AAUP. We've got meetings coming up this Friday and Wednesday for anyone that wants to join, but I'm wondering if you could say a little bit more about your thinking behind that, right?
Well, I'm not making ads for the AAUP here. I mean, I love y'all, but I think that the general the general gist of what I was stating is, look, I personally and professionally believe that academic freedom is one of the reasons why American success in higher ed has been so fruitful. I can talk to you about outcomes. I know I've been directly knowledgeable of, watched discoveries that have been made that have turned into significant economic value for this country that are a direct result of academic freedom, right? You know, and you can go from the first web browser in Mosaic, right? There was no internet at the time. You had these researchers working on an idea that had no research value that they knew of, that had, you know, that would not have been funded by any funding agency because there was no market, there was no outcome, right? There was no discussion at the time of what if this browser concept would be fruitful at all. There was just a network of individual faculty and students who were communicating with each other over this thing called the net. In without academic freedom, those faculty members could have been told to cease and desist, that you can't work on that area of research, that you cannot pursue that line of work. And because we had that, and they were free to do something, whether it was deemed of value or not, right? We were able to generate an outcome that has literally generated trillions of dollars of value to the world, not just to the US, right? Direct outcome, right? And when we start playing around with these basic freedoms, and I can give you a whole host of things, right? I watched we had a running joke of a faculty member who was in my department when I was in Ohio, who was literally studying cow flatulence, cow farts. And other faculty would make a joke, you know, basically, your work is bullshit, right? I mean, it was all kinds of stuff like that, right? But they kept at it. They kept moving with it, and come to find out, the correlation of those releases to CO2 production turned out to be quite a significant find relative to what's happening in our climate, right? So imagine if someone took it upon themselves to say, no, you can't study that, or no, you should not study. This is ridiculous. You know, you're studying cow farts. Come on, right? No serious scientist would do that. Okay, but here's the point. Without academic freedom, you don't have those discoveries and you don't have those outcomes. Look, the whole the work on chlorofluorocarbons, which turned out to be the essence of what the hole in the ozone layer was, which was the quintessential thing that when I was growing up that was going to destroy the earth. We're talking about climate change now. It was the hole in the ozone layer back when I was a kid. Same thing with that work, right? Look, I go on and on this. The point that I'm making is that when you start to play around with academic freedom, I think you're messing with something that could have disastrous outcomes for the planet, not just the country. And so I'm a staunch supporter of it. I know that provost is as well. We look and so that's what I'm defending. And I do believe that it's incumbent on all faculty, if you have a problem with this, to not, for lack of a better way of putting this, put that burden on others when you should be defending it yourself. And I also told you that I don't think that, at least like I said, at this point in time, I don't believe that there is a problem on our particular campus relative to this. but that there could be. And if there ever is, people need to defend it. It's incredibly important. But I think it's incredibly important to the safety and the security of the country, to be totally honest with you, even though it may not seem like it right now. I think it's that critical. Like it is that important to our standard and our way of life. And we got to maintain that.
Thank you, Greg. And I want to say that if the AAUP is good for any one thing, it's definitely defending academic freedom. And so we're all aligned on that angle very clearly. And by the way, the rector has spoken on this in this very setting and said the same. So we have all the leadership on record being in support of academic freedom. So that's important. Let's go to Eugene. Go ahead with your comment.
Okay, Eugene, I think you might be on mute. We can't see your face because I think that you're backlit, but
Drew, let me jump to Anna. Let's go to Anna, and then we can go back.
Okay, great. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thanks, President Washington, for your time and for your leadership during this challenging time. I have, I think, an easier question. I wanted to get your perspective or thoughts on Mason being a resource and or hiring and or providing, courses or other opportunities for federal workers who are in our region during this time.
So we are working on a strategy. You'll hear something relative to this over the next coming weeks. We do believe that we have something to say about displaced workers relative to helping them get retrained so that they can get placed back into the workforce. Times like this do create an opportunity space, for people to change their lives. I always look for that silver lining, and there are going to be people who are looking for what that next chapter in their lives are going to be. As an academic institution, we educate and train. And so we should have something to say about what that next chapter looks like. And it can be, we can be a help to society, but better than that, we can be part of that institution that the community not just tolerates or not just wants to be here, but that institution that is needed to be here. And so I feel good about our plans there, and I don't want to get over my skis relative to them, but you'll start to hear those plans being made public here soon.
Thank you. I want to make sure you get the law school in here. Has you been able to unmute, Eugene? Maybe not. We lost the visual on that one as well. I have a question while we wait. There's concerns about. Oh, go ahead. Try.
Good. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, great. So President Washington, thank you so much, and really appreciate in particular your comments on free speech and the importance of free speech. And I know one of the things a lot of people have been struggling to get their minds around is the parameters of free speech. And as I heard, your comments, the university is committed to protecting speech by students and faculty to the fullest possible extent that it would be protected by the First Amendment of the United States Constitution. At the same time, it creates confusion because I think previously there had been some thought or understanding, and I can mention things that helped create that understanding, that the university would not protect all speech protected by the Constitution. For example, speech that was racially hateful, created an unsafe or hostile work environment. I myself took a DEI training online, which said that breaches of civility and hostile work environments, which I think are protected by the First Amendment, would nonetheless be punishable. And we thought that was very important, especially in the years after George Floyd. There was a lot of efforts to ensure respectful speech by faculty and students. And so does this represent a retrenchment from those prior views? And if so, in what direction?
Well, so it's not a retrenchment. Let me highlight. Let me highlight what that means. There are carve-outs in the Constitution, in constitutional doctrine, for speech that is threatening or harassing speech, right? That speech is not protected under free speech. Now, the challenge is defining what that is. That's always been at question and an issue. And training or speech that is racially insensitive, racially demeaning. And look, all I can tell you is you have an example in me personally. I have been the direct recipient of speech that has been hateful, that has been racially motivated. Some of that speech has been recorded, and from what I can tell, no one has been prosecuted or had their job threatened and the like for that particular speech. I mean, I wasn't threatened. I don't feel like I was harassed. But there have been things that have said that are indeed hateful. Recorded in open meetings. Okay, and so this is always a difficult line to walk. I think we've done it better than most. I spend a good part of each of the last 3 years talking to students, defending free speech, having to deal with free speech related issues because one group is angry at something that students from another group said about them. And we've been on record in that, and most of that has been racially motivated, to be totally honest with you. So we do have a track record in that regard of supporting it. And I think that the track record is clear.
Thank you. Do you want to follow up? Okay, good. I wanted to follow up on this in the other direction, but the same vein, which is this question that came up at the board about the river to the sea chant. Have you thought about this in any more about, because of there is an argument that this is one can interpret this in at least two different ways. What's your sense of that particular chant at this point in time?
My feeling on that particular chant is that it's hate speech.
Okay.
And I've never strayed from that. It is hate speech, but it's protected hate speech. Hate speech is protected, and I have not taken that as my opinion. I have literally sought out the feedback of some of the best scholars in the country on free speech to give me feedback relative to that. I have basically a position paper that was written for me, for Mason, on this specific topic and term by Erwin Chemerinsky, who's Jewish and considered one of the best scholars in the country on free speech. I have utilized that in our policy relative to this specific topic and this specific issue. And so, look, the reality is it's a tough one. It's because in an environment of free speech, people will say hurtful things. And, and oftentimes stages of free speech are not born by the individuals who make the speech. They're actually paid by the individuals who feel its aftermath. And that too is an American construct that we actually have to figure out how we manage and deal with.
Thanks. I just bring it up because I've heard the argument from a number of people who say that it's a one-state solution. Potentially, that would be inclusive of everybody, so it wouldn't have to be. But that's an argument that I hear. So it could be that the intention wouldn't be hate. So I just to say that as an argument that comes from some of our
I
colleagues.
hear you. I understand.
Okay, that's fair enough. We've held Greg longer than I'd hoped to do, but it just seemed important to run this and give a chance to air out some of these questions we've got. It's an important time, difficult time, gangsta time, as we say. But we'll kind of get through this. And one last thing I wanted to see in terms of defense, if someone were to come after us in some kind of way, what sort of are we in a legal position to defend ourselves?
What? Say that again.
Are we in a legal, I mean, do we have counsel that would be in a position to support us in a case that if money were taken away from us in an illegitimate way, like from Columbia or Johns Hopkins or what have you?
I would hope so. I would hope that we would have counsel that would, and if we didn't, we would seek to find counsel that actually would defend us in that manner. I think our federal funding is approaching 280 some odd million dollars of expenditures. If that were taken away, at that point, you have no choice but to try to defend that resource.
Okay.
There's no doubt in my mind that we would defend it.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. I think that exhausts the questions we have for you today. Thanks again for being so available. I feel like we've, as I say, we've had a lot of time to talk with you over the past few months. So I think
we needed to talk.
Yeah.
And I just hope that I've been consistent in terms of the feedback that I've given you, and let's see what happens as we move forward. Look, what I will tell you is the reality is that we're all in this together. We are literally all in the same storm. We might be in different boats, but we're in definitely the same storm, and we're going to get through this together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thanks, Greg. All right, I'm going to relieve you of duty and move on to our agenda. Okay, thank you so much. I think maybe we want we have a lot of business to attend to, and I think it'd be nice in a sense to move to O&O material right away. And before we get to the other committee reports, Melissa, do we need a motion to move the order?
We do, and I'm trying to remember the exact language, but let's say motion to change the order of the agenda to do O&O and faculty handbook first.
Okay.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor of moving the agenda to do the O&O business and faculty handbook business before the other committee reports, please unmute and say aye.
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 All those opposed? Great. Okay. So let's go ahead with the O&O agenda. And Melissa, I'll hand it over to you or to Catherine.
I think I'm doing it, yeah.
Okay, Catherine, go ahead.
So I have 4, I believe, voting items of business, and I'll try and be as efficient as possible. So the first one is the Senate allocation for next year. We did the calculations. There was a change in the Senate calculations. So College of Engineering and Computing, as you can see from the spreadsheet here, they have like a proportion of 8.54, so we rounded up for them. That gives us 52 senators for the next year. We've done this before, and the charter does make room for this, so if there's a rounding situation, we can add an extra seat for that year. Potentially it will go away the following year, but it just depends on the FTEs.
So there's only one change in this then, is that right?
Yes, that's the only one.
Okay, engineering got an extra.
Mhm.
Okay.
I have a question on that. Is that engineer, do you do that, or we do that internally, in terms of whether it is CEC or College of School of Computing or School of Engineering? Do you know that?
I believe that whoever's in charge of the CEC elections just needs to be notified that there is an extra seat for next year, and they will just add that to the election slate, I guess.
No. I think what I meant is within CEC, School of Engineering right now gets out of the 8, School of Engineering is 4 and School of Computing is 4. I'm wondering if you do that division or it is done within the college. I don't know. So that's anyway. I'll find out.
Internal to the college. Melissa, we don't decide that, do we?
Yeah, each college establishes its own policies and procedures for electing senators and how they're apportioned.
Okay.
I'll have to find it out.
Well, it's essentially based on a similar number. So
your engineers, it'll be
okay.
Okay. So what's the action item on this one then? What do we
need to just vote to approve it?
We need a vote to approve. Okay, we'll try a voice vote on this one, I think, and see. Any discussion at first, I guess, of the motion? Do we have any discussion? No? All right, we'll ask for a vote. So all those in favor of this apportionment of the faculty senate, please unmute and say aye.
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 And all those opposed? Great. Okay, we have a new senate allocation.
Thank you. The next one is I am back with the standing rules. So last meeting we did approve a bunch of changes, but there was some concern and just needed clarification over the meeting recordings that were happening. So O&O met and we made these adjustments that you will see here. We just wanted to make sure to preserve the integrity of our meetings and make sure that people were able to speak freely during the meeting without kind of fear of anything coming back to them. And so what we wrote was that representatives of the Board of Visitors, the administration, stuff like that, those comments will be transcribed in the minutes and also the question to which they are responding. But other than that, the meeting minutes will just come from the recordings and then the recordings will be deleted.
Discussion on this one? No discussion? Okay, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor of the changes to the standing rules, would you please unmute and say aye?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Okay.
Thank you. The next two that I have are just proposed changes to committee charges. And so if members of the committees are here and need to add anything, I'm happy to give time for that. But the first is budget and resources. So we are, I believe, just adding the last item here about annually obtaining and posting the faculty salary data, and then any analysis that comes with that on the Senate website.
And which is currently a practice. We're just writing it into the charge, right? And by the way, this is a very nice thing to have. And if you wonder, this isn't something that every institution has where you post the data in this way. Any discussion? Let's carry on as before then. Let's all those in favor of this change, let's unmute and say aye.
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 And all those opposed? Very good. Thank you.
And then the last one is the Faculty Handbook Revision Committee charge. And so for this one, we wanted to kind of make sure that it is stated that for the chair of the committee must be one of the senators, because that person will be part of the Senate Executive Committee. And so we want to just ensure that they are an actual senator to be on there. And then we are adjusting the wording about the consecutive meetings. So right now it says at least 5 weeks between, like, for the different, to see the proposals, the 2 readings, I guess, that we would have. And so this year in particular, I believe that kind of passed over 2 of our meetings and we had to include it in the 3rd of those meetings. And so this will just go and say that 2 consecutive regular Senate meetings will be enough time for that. Yes, question.
Go ahead, Vin. You're muted.
I just wanted to let the senators know that we are working on a non-retaliation policy that should dovetail with your first point. Solon, as part of the committee, we're working on with ethics and integrity, that will be part of it. So I just wanted you to know that we're trying to work with the faculty senate on this, as well as everybody else.
Could you clarify which point it helps us with?
The first point about Catherine, can you scroll up a bit?
Oh, for the not budget and resources.
The standing rules?
Standing rules?
Yes, that highlighted text. I think that at least relatively falls within what we're trying to do.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Okay.
Sorry for
come back to this change. If you remember, and Tim will remember, if you were here in the days when we were putting forward handbook changes all at once, we wanted to make sure we had time to debate those changes. And one of the improvements that we've made along the way is we bring them piecemeal, not all at once as well. So, but we want to make sure that we have opportunity to debate, that no one's blindsided by changes in the faculty handbook, because this speaks to this notorious Shills report we've been talking about. What are the proper rules by which faculty are governed and promoted and so on. So anyway, this might help us with the timing as we adapt. So any discussion of this, and also go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just add a couple of things. So this is the same language we use for any changes to graduation requirements or anything else. And so this is consistent with other policies. We also removed this last sentence about any meeting where proposed revisions are presented, maybe a special meeting. And that was so that we can't call a special meeting one day before a meeting.
Nice.
It really has to be regularly scheduled meetings. And that seemed a little bit out of place. So we just took that out as well.
Yeah, and you know what that's there. Yeah, good. That's great. So does everyone understand what we're talking about here? We want to make sure you have opportunity to debate a change you didn't like in particular. That's usually what this is for. You have enough time and warning, because sometimes you don't know the change is coming until you come to the Senate meeting. And the other thing is that we want to make sure, because we changed recently so that the faculty handbook committee, being such an important committee, that would be on the executive committee, but it's executive committee of the Senate. And so we have members who are not always senators on that committee. Okay. Go ahead, John.
Then you mentioned something about a non-retaliatory clause, I guess, or an addition to this that would dovetail. Can you?
No, that was I think for the standing rules comment. Vin had made a
previous item, I think. That's what I understand.
I'm happy to shut up now.
It was about the meeting recordings and ensuring that faculty, were able to speak freely in this meeting.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. All right.
Yeah. Okay. So we're ready to vote on this one. Okay, so let's try the voice vote again. Let's if you're in favor of this, would you please unmute and say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed? Okay, wonderful. Thank you. O&O, do you have any other business?
I do not believe so, no.
Great. Okay, then let's move on to handbook.
All right, we have lots of business today. 3 items that we will vote on that we have already talked about.
Hey, Solon, we need to, sorry.
Motion to extend time?
Motion to extend, take it now.
It's fine if you'd like to move.
Yeah, I'd like to move to 4:30.
Second on that. Okay, we have unmute and say aye if you'll motion to extend time.
Aye.
Okay, all those opposed? Great, we're open until 4:30.
All right. So these first 3 changes are ones that we have already seen and have already discussed. We did make a couple of minor edits that were suggested here. The removing of the word initial in one place, exactly the things that we talked about here. So I'm just going to show the track changes, but you do see in the agenda the proposed, the track changes, and the current. This first one is about term appointments. And there had been confusion about whether it was only 1 year or 3 year, depending on terminal versus non-terminal degrees. And so this actually doesn't change the policy, but it's clarifying the language so that faculty who are term faculty with terminal degrees can have an initial appointment of 3 years at the rank of assistant, up to 5 years at associate and full, but not for those without terminal degrees. So not a policy change, but it is a language change to clarify what we were already saying. Is there any discussion about this one?
And it's just this in this one paragraph, all this, the term faculty.
It is. And Solon, do you want to vote on these as we go at them one at a time?
One at a time would be nice. That way we can focus on them.
Okay.
Is that okay? So any discussion of this item? People understand what we're talking about? Okay, let's go ahead and do a voice vote. And all those who are in favor of the change, would you please unmute and say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
And all those opposed? The ayes have it. We can move to the next item.
All right. The next item, again, one that we've already seen is about, oh, that's the same one. Move a little further forward here. Is about procedures for renewal and appointment of department chairs. And so you'll remember the last time that we met, we talked about, there had been some confusion about whether the process was the same for a search or not. And it had been outlined below as a little bit separate, but because of the note linking to the composition of the committee for full searches, there had been some confusion. And so this was clarified. Additionally, there were questions about what do we even mean by an identity of use? And so that language had been clarified with committee and faculty perspectives to try to reach consensus. No changes here from the last time.
Okay. So discussion on this item. Make sure you understand what we're talking about. It seems like a clarification of language and then a bit of process.
Mm-hmm.
Clarification that the final decision rests with the provost.
Oh, and here's the section about clarifying that renewals are this process instead of the one above.
Okay. Go ahead, John.
When you say try to reach consensus, what what might that entail? Are we presumably measuring where everybody is? Does it require extra meetings or persuasive?
Yeah. So this is in section. Yeah, this is in the section on department chair searches. So not renewals, but searches. And in this case, the trying to reach consensus is when the dean disagrees with the department or the provost disagrees with the department. Let me back up a little bit. If the committee and the department faculty are in disagreement, the dean is going to meet with them together to hear them all out and see if they can all reach consensus. If the dean and the department disagree, that's when the provost meets with them to try to reach consensus and hear everybody out.
So it implies a discussion is what it sounds like.
Yeah. And if nobody agrees, the provost is the final decision, is the other thing that's here.
So there is a concrete implication of a kind of a conversation, but it doesn't specify how that conversation will go or the rules of that conversation.
Yeah, I've seen this go down in different ways in other departments outside our own university, and that gets it's a lot of latitude there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But the final decision rests with the provost as a final word, of course.
We do have a decisive, at least whether it's the right way to do it or not. It's
Solon, if it's of any practical significance as you consider this, colleagues, the provost would be ill-advised to pursue an appointment that was in deep conflict internally. We would take our time, we'd send people back to the drawing board, and I would challenge deans and departments to try and find consensus. It serves nobody for the provost to just unilaterally name a department chair when there's deep conflict of opinion.
Thank you. That's good to hear. So any other discussion of this item? And keep in mind, this has gone through a pretty good vetting process with the committee as well as the provost team. So, okay, let's go through the voice vote procedure again. Of those in favor of this change, would you please unmute and say aye?
Aye. Aye.
And all those opposed? Okay, the ayes have it.
All right, this next one is the last one that we'll vote on before we move on to first reads. And this is about the leave program for instructional faculty, or what we might call study leaves. And this one just has a couple of small changes. One is clarifying that the 6-year timeframe does not include the pre-tenure, or what we call the tenure track study leave. And the thing that we changed from last time is that we added the C3.6.1. And then we also add a requirement that the procedures, criteria, and deadlines be published, not that they exist in some black box.
Just making sure that this isn't just a carrot given out by deans to whoever they like. Right. So, any discussion? These are smaller changes, perhaps. Hearing none, let's go ahead and move to the vote. All those in favor of these changes, would you please unmute and say aye?
Aye.
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 And all those opposed? Great, the ayes have it.
All right,
I
thank
have a
you.
related question. Oh, sorry, you're done with the things?
Oh, we have 4 more to go, Mohan.
Okay, let's do these things. Yeah.
All right, so the next 4 that I'm going to present are changes that we have not yet seen. They've been in the agenda for the last week, but they have gone through the Faculty Handbook Revision Committee and have been looked at by the provost. And so the first one has to do with the awarding of tenure at time of appointment, or tenure upon hire, is what we typically call it. And the problem that we're trying to solve here, and many of you have felt this pain in your departments, if we are trying to recruit somebody who is already tenured, maybe it's an associate or a full professor. Often this happens when we're trying to recruit a department chair, a dean, a provost. Provost Anthony went through this process as well. Right now, we have a really cumbersome tenure upon hire process that is not reflective of what most institutions do. And we had the exact same process for someone for tenure upon hire as someone who was going up for tenure at the first time, even if that person was already tenured and held the same rank at a previous institution. And so we're not eliminating the process, but it was often slowed down by things like getting additional external review letters. Even though, as a search committee, you were going through reviews, they'd already gotten the external review letters, they had reference letters, and so on. And so what we're trying to do here is streamline the process for tenure upon hire and say that if you already earned tenure at your previous institution and are being hired at the same rank that you previously held, that we're using the job application materials to constitute the bulk of the dossier. The candidate can still add things to it, but for those of you who have gotten external review letters for someone on tenure upon hire, it creates a lot of uncertainty in time, and we lose a lot of really good candidates. And so it's still the process, but the dossier is a little bit streamlined, using materials that we've already gotten from the candidate. And so that's what the goal is of this set of changes. And I'll open the floor for discussion before we move on to the next one, but we're not voting today, just discussion and feedback.
This is an important time, if you notice something, to give the feedback, because we can actually make it adaptations and changes. Go ahead, John.
My understanding is that external review letters are confidential and remain that way, but this seems to suggest they get passed on to the dossier.
Oh, so we wouldn't get external review letters. We would let the candidate use the reference letters and other materials from their application, but we would not require additional external reference letters.
So tenure is tenure, and that remains kind of black box. Whoever weighed in on that and what they said, which is an important ingredient in the tenure process, right? I'm just wondering. I mean, I could imagine us hiring somebody who had tenure from a while back, and you're not sure what that process was like. I like the idea of streamlining this. It certainly makes hiring easier, but if questions arose and you had to convince other faculty members, persuade them, and that issue that wouldn't come up, because that's not something that we'd be looking at, right? Okay.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Melanie.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. So I'm pretty ignorant of the tenure process, not being tenured myself, but I do want to raise that my law faculty feels it's really important to streamline the process for hiring lateral tenured professors. And I don't know that our I will share this draft language with my faculty, be prepared to bring back their comments next time, but they seem to have a concern that even if you have to institute a full process in the interfolio system, it's a signal to other institutions. And then if you don't make that lateral hire, it reflects negatively on the scholar's reputation in the scholarly community. So trying to avoid that also.
I want to piggyback on this comment. I'm in conversation with our dean of our law school about this very issue, and am really looking forward to all of you Senate colleagues gaining clarity here, because I think it will go a long way to solving the law school's concerns. There's also the issue. When you put names out there, those names become poaching targets. And in my short time as provost, I've already seen that happen. And it doesn't just happen here, it happens at lots of institutions. So we don't want to put ourselves inadvertently in a competitive stance when we're really trying to recruit somebody. So just keep that in mind. Anything we can do to clear up the language, to streamline things without eliminating rigor. Maybe we can even go so far as to add a sentence here to specifically say that we're attempting to streamline processes that are tenure upon hire, and so that the letters that are included as part of the dossier really have to be tenure-like letters, or they have to at least have those components. I know it's alluded to here, but maybe the language might be strengthened so that everybody feels confident there's scholarly rigor in the review.
Thanks, Jim. Amon.
I just want to add to it. Having been involved in this process, I agree with the provost on the poaching targets, and also it is really difficult to get that many letters and all that process. Having seen that, the difficulty in it, and also there is a time frame issue, right? Like when we do this, normally it takes one full year, but this with a tenure upon hire, we had to do this in a compressed time frame. It is even worse. I just want to ask for a clarification here. This is only for parallel hires, right? But it's not like a step up or something like that. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah, right now the language says for faculty who earn tenure and are being hired at the same rank.
At the same rank. Okay. Thank you.
And I'll also say I'm happy to take emails with specific language suggestions if there are things that people have.
Christine.
Thank you. So for the tenure process, the recommendation letters must come from people who are not direct collaborators. But for the hiring process, letters can come from collaborators. So aren't those two standards that are being applied here, accepting letters from the hiring package?
Yeah, so they are different letters that were written with a different purpose for sure. One part of our thinking here was that if you are, let's say, so for example, our department was trying to recruit a senior full professor earlier this year to replace or to fill the spot, to fill a gap that was being left by one of our departing distinguished faculty members. And so when you're hiring for someone based on that quality, right, you are, as a set of colleagues, really recruiting them because of their excellent work. You wouldn't be trying to recruit somebody who you didn't think already met those standards. And so the references are serving a little bit different function. But our expectation with the language here is that you are applying the same standards for scholarly productivity and quality in your hiring process that you would in the tenure process at that rank. I don't know if that answers the question or if you have some suggestions for specific language, but that was sort of our intent here.
I don't know if I have suggestions for the language, but to me it looks like you are using, if you accept as letter of support from the hiring package to be used towards the promotion, you are applying a different standard that apply when someone is just going for promotion or a tenure and promotion, because in that case, collaborators cannot write letters from collaborators cannot be part of the package. Whereas in this case, letters from collaborators are part of the package if you don't request new letters.
Are you contemplating a case where someone was hired and maybe promoted during the hire, so they were an associate professor in another institution and they were going to be hired as a full professor? Is that what you're imagining?
So I'm imagining that we hire someone who comes a full professor, and we use as letters in recommendations in the dossier, the letters that were submitted in support of the hiring package.
Yeah. I
Right,
think
we-
the thinking is that you would only, if you're hiring a full professor, you would evaluate them on a hire as if they were qualified as a full professor. But you're right, it wouldn't be, you'd be trusting the promotion process of the other institution.
But if I am an associate professor and I seek promotion at George Mason, then the letters that I am required to submit must come from non-collaborators.
Yeah.
But in this case, Christina, we're talking about someone who was already a full professor who already had those at another institution. And so it's a lateral move, not an actual promotion. I don't know if that distinction makes sense. But that's sort of where that, like, we're not seeing the letters as trying to do the same thing necessarily.
So, Melissa and Christiana, I wonder if this might help as you're considering revisions to this language. You know, at every university I've served, when we are hiring somebody for a lateral rank recruitment, so they're full somewhere else and they're coming, the search committee is not going to even consider anybody who's not tenurable or you know, at that rank. Like they don't even get to the second phase conversation. So there's a step here that's implied, I think, in the handbook, but I wonder if it needs to be made explicit in some fashion that you know, a search committee has to ensure that any candidate they're even bringing, that consideration's already occurred. Now, how they come to that, I don't know, and that's what I'm hearing Christiana say. The second part of this is, I really would love to have efficiencies. I know we all would, but none of the universities I've served at don't have some kind of process where if a person's going for a lateral move somewhere else, the letters that are included in the dossier aren't in fact equivalent to the kinds of letters that would address these concerns. I mean, I write these letters all the time, and I know if somebody's going to another place as a full professor, I have to say magic words in my letter about their scholarly, you know, reputation and their ability to serve as a full professor in the place they're being recruited. So maybe we need to really be explicit that what's in this dossier has to rise to the standards of what we would expect in a standard tenure review or promotion review. That's just the way the search has to be conducted. So when we give instructions to the candidate, we tell them the letters that you include, the references, maybe Christiana's right, because there's a tenure component or a lateral component. Don't include direct collaborators. That's just good general practice.
Interesting.
I don't know, just a thought.
Would that help, Christina?
I think she froze, but
Yes, no, I'm reading it. It's very small.
Frozen thought.
Yeah, I'm trying to process what I'm reading. Yes, I think, yeah, that should be should clarify. Yeah.
Interesting. And so it's more about the search process and the rigor of the search process.
Yeah. And that would necessarily change what we put in the ad in terms of what we're asking.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah, that's a really interesting idea. Alex.
Thanks, Melissa. I don't necessarily have a solution, just a question that maybe we can keep thinking about as we're writing this. If we're relying on sort of the tenure practices of other institutions that are somewhat black box for us when we're hiring these folks, what do we do if we're hiring someone internationally, right? Like, how does this expedited tenure process apply in that case? Some sort of like provision for how we consider that, I think would be
helpful.
Yeah, or what do we do, if we're hiring from a place that perhaps, for lack of a more elegant way of saying it, we don't see as necessarily having the same reputation or standards. I think both of these points are excellent, and if we can clarify here that the search itself should strive to answer these questions of intellectual rigor and readiness for the appointment that they're competing for at George Mason, that's the content of the letter. And, that ideally they're not written by people with conflicts of interest. Then I think we're in good stead.
That's great.
This is really helpful. For those of you on the handbook committee, this means we are having that in the last handbook meeting.
Okay.
All right, let's move on to the next one given time, but please send emails and comments if there are other things that folks think about later. The next one is about the remand process. And so this has to do with promotion and tenure appeals. And so there are some very specific criteria for reasons that a tenure or promotion that was not approved can be appealed. And it usually has to do with process or discrimination or new evidence. And one of the things that we are suggesting here is just a very small change. It wasn't clear. I feel like we're missing. So the reason for the case file submitted by Uptrack, and we're just changing this to, or it was, let me back up. The file submitted by the Uptrack must be explicitly addressed. It wasn't quite clear what we meant by case file. And so instead we're clarifying the language to say the reason for the Uptrack remand, so that it's clearly getting at those reasons that the case was appealed, rather than sort of this lack of clarity around whether the case file was what went to Uptrack in terms of saying that it needed to go to Uptrack, whether it was the dossier, whether it was something else. So very small change for clarity.
And this is from people who see the process very much up close. And
it is.
Okay, maybe we move to the, so please look over that and see if you have a point on that one, but that's inside baseball.
And then the last one is the grievance procedures. And so we already have some clarity around grievances that are going to happen at the unit level versus at the university grievance committee. One of the things that is unusual in this second section is that within the college and school, not at any of the other grievance levels, but only at the college and school level, there was this line in C that was treating violations of academic freedom as a very different kind of grievance process than other grievances. So typically, right, we have a grievance committee, they go through the case. If it's at the level below the dean, it's handled within the college or school. If it's the dean or outside of the college or school, it goes to the university process. And the committee hears the case and gives their recommendation. But there was this line about in cases of alleged violations of academic freedom, the faculty of the college or school acts on its grievance committee's recommendation by a formal vote. And there was concern that, if there's an academic freedom violation, whether the grievance committee is or thinks that it happened or didn't, we're now bringing this to the entire faculty of the college or school. And that seemed inappropriate to be airing that to everybody, especially in cases where the findings were that the person hadn't done anything wrong. But also it was really inconsistent with us or the process we use for any other grievance. And so we removed that.
Want to do a time check as well. We might need a motion to extend. Maybe 10 minutes. Does anyone want to move? Or what should we do, Melissa? Okay. Tell
5 minutes. Is that enough?
I think we might need 5
I
minutes.
In 10 minutes.
And okay, can we have
next to the last one?
Can we have a second on that?
I'll
second.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let's take the time.
You should say all those remaining.
Any questions about the grievance? Doesn't mean that these don't go through the process, but they go through the same process as everything else.
Recommend our AUP colleagues look this one over, make sure there's no reason that was put in there in the first place.
All right, and then the last one is salary increases. And so we already had language talking about salary increases and connecting them to annual evaluations. But one of the things that we've heard from a lot of colleges and from colleagues in a lot of colleges is that they didn't know how merit-based increases were being distributed, right? It says something about annual evaluations, but they weren't finding out why or how evaluations were being used, right? Is it percentage? Is it dollar value based on your evaluation? Is it something else? And so we're not telling units how they have to do this. But with this revision, what we are doing is saying that each college or school, and colleges and schools can pass this down to their local units if they choose, shall have a policy or documented process in place for determining and communicating merit-based increases, right? So you have to say how you're doing it, and you have to say how much it was. You can figure out how you're going to do that. But we're trying to increase transparency here by making sure that that's clear.
I like this. I like the shall language too. I always like that shall language.
It helps to have someone from University Council on our
I
committee.
used to oppose the shall, but I like the shall. Okay. Great. And these are just first reads. You can come back to all these. That's, important. John, go ahead.
Sorry. I would probably, if that does pass, we should notify faculty matters committees across the board too before it just goes to the chair. The chair ultimately writes the letters, but a lot of it's based on the work of the faculty matters committees, and keeping that in mind, I think will create a better basis for that sort of evaluation.
Is that department or is it college?
I know it's departments. Yeah, departments.
You have a faculty matters college
yeah,
department committee.
Yep, and then each one goes to a department chair, and the chair writes the letters that you would.
Well,
be
not every.
but they might not all do that. So
not all colleges do.
Yeah, but that's something to consider, especially if it's uneven across departments.
That's a chess thing. It doesn't apply across all the units. Okay, great. Zach.
I was just wondering if we're doing shall, should it also be LAU administrators shall?
Help me out, Zach.
Okay, right where you had it, where it says local, after the red, merit-based salary increases local unit administrators will include.
Oh, yeah, the one like it's lesser.
Yeah, well, I don't know.
It's different.
But it's different, and that's confusing. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't want any of that.
Thank you.
Good catch, Zach. Okay.
I like
That
that
the last one, or do you have another one?
No, this is the last one. And so, again, if you read these and you have other ideas or feedback, we are meeting on April 18th as a committee, and then we will, I believe that's correct, and then we'll bring this back to the last Faculty Senate meeting for a vote for these last four. So thank you all very much.
Lovely. Okay, so that's great. So it's a lot of business, but important stuff. And we lost Visitor Alec Bay, but he got to see a lot of this. So I hope that, there's a sense that we really do take this handbook stuff seriously, and it's very thought through, and we don't want to revert to a 1972 or whatever year document that is. Okay. Let's move to other committee business in order, and we can note the time, but we have, let's go to academic policies.
So for academic policies, I just have a quick few notes that I'll make even quicker. So just reporting on Graduate Council, which today approved 4 policy updates. 6441, which is about voluntary resignation, 68, which is about secondary certificates, 695 about embedded master's degrees within other degrees, and then 611, which is a new degree, the specialist, which resides somewhere between the MA and the PhD, as I understand it, which is a new thing that we are offering. You can go to the Graduate Council website to read the minutes to see what those changes were. They don't go through our committee, but I am just reporting on them so that everybody knows to take a look in case they are impacted. And then the second note is that the AI task force has put together, if you haven't seen it already, the website, gmu.edu/AI. And just a quick note that all of the information there is providing a core set of principles and guidance, but there is no new institutional policy. It's simply aligning current and existing policy with what might be questions about how we use or don't use AI. And also by the end of the semester, we should have some additional guidance, but not policy, about how to use AI for students, for faculty, for researchers, and for business operations. Next meeting, we'll have a couple of things for you to look at, and that is the end of my report. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Let's move to faculty matters.
Yeah, we don't have too much at this meeting, but it's just basically faculty evaluation of administrators is coming. We are taking a look at what's available for the chairs, and I had to sit with the provost office and then see if any or some of it can be distributed for the last year that was done. We identified the problems before, so we'll have more clarity on it by next meeting. And more importantly, there is a strong faculty has been reaching out to us about this new board resolution on anti-Semitism and University Policy 1201. And now that the board resolution has been passed, and we suspect there may be a revision to University Policy 1201, and faculties matters want to bring a resolution in this regard to so that the Senate can exercise its agency, and if there is something to be communicated to the administration in this regard. So that we plan to bring it at the next meeting, a resolution, and it will be distributed in time, the draft resolution, and it's essentially addressing the board's resolution and then what faculty thinks about it.
Thank you so much. And I want to say that in a way, if you heard my comments to the board, it turns out we are doing all our business, even though we're addressing these concerns as well. With something I said, we were being, in a way, unable to do our business, but we actually are getting a lot of business done. So thank you. And so faculty evaluation of administrators is coming in a Gallup Pulse survey, as well as make sure to do your coach survey. You want to make sure that we get the evidence-based institutional change data collected. So just want to make sure we have that. Okay, let's move to nominations.
Yes, we do have two calls prepped and ready to go out. One's for the University Standing Committee and the other for the call for the Board of Visitors. So be on the lookout for those. We're having a little technical issues, but hopefully we'll get that distributed to all faculty very soon.
Thank you so much. We'll have that. I'll be sending you an email encouraging you to apply for these various positions. Nominations is obviously how we get all our positions staffed. So I think we're on time technically, I suppose, even though we're over time. Any comments for the good of the faculty? I do want to say, it's important that we represent our colleagues in this difficult time. People they're full of anxiety. And if there's anything I'm doing that you ever hear concerns about, please surface those to me. It's my job to represent all of our faculty, all 1,500 faculty, not just people in the Senate. But I would encourage you to do as much as you can to reach out, allay fears, make sure that we have those concerns surfaced, because the worst thing is to rely on imagination, because the imagination can sometimes be worse than what's actually happening. And what I would say is that although the federal administration is doing some special things, different things than we've ever seen, the board itself has been pretty above board, as the rector has said to us, and we had robust discussion, for example, about this anti-Semitism resolution, and we were heard. I would say the majority opinion that I was trying to represent did not win that vote, but our position was heard. So far the board has been fairly direct, and I think we're able to maintain our voice to this point. So, but please do surface those concerns. Tim, please.
Yeah, so just quick question. Why are you trying to reassure us about the board?
I'm trying to reassure us about the board so that you understand that you can still have a lever to pull if you want.
You have your forum and it's this, but my interpretation of the board's actions is much less sanguine than that. So I look forward to continuing that debate in the future.
That's good, and that's why I'm inviting you to tell me. That's one of the reasons.
That's all. No worries.
No. That's exactly right. Well, I feel like I can have conversations. That's the important piece, and I want you to keep raising the real critical points. That's what I want. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Do we maybe we could have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? All right. We'll end the meeting at 4:40. Thanks for coming, everybody, and we'll see you next time.